Okay, we're on. All right. We'll go ahead and call the Finance Administration Committee meeting of April 22nd to order. Public session is first up. There is no one from the public present, so we'll move forward. Update on current projects.
All right, Exhibit A in your packet, and I did make an attempt with this to do what Mr. Mulder had discussed last time about removing the items that were at 100%. I think the easiest thing for me to do next time would be just to hide them, but even that was a little bit of a task when I tried to do it this time because of the colors with the rows. Any questions about any of the projects that we have going on right now? Again, notes for these will be on the pages 3, 4, and 6.
All right, we'll move on to, just making sure. You good, Scott? Okay.
Good.
Second item, consider options for increasing impact fees, including a phase approach as discussed at the April 7th board meeting.
All right. Thank you for this. So now, if you look at the handout I just provided to you, it's a two-sided sheet. The first side on it has impact fees, and it has an implementation period of phasing it in. So the current fee will be shown on the left, and the implementation period, it's just equally divided by the number at the top to phase it in over a 1 to a 5 year period. So row 1 shows what the fee would be for fiscal year 26 if that was to be done, followed by the difference from the current rate of $15.25, and then below that thick line shows what the impact would be for a single-family residential home or an equivalent using the current policy that we have in place, but with the new fees.
So if we chose a 3-year period, this next year we would go to 1874, and then the following year, so we would pick it up that way.
Yes, sir.
So if we do a 4-year period, we would go from 15 to 17, and then step up from there to year 1.
Yes, sir. So the amount underneath that first row for 4 years, it would increase by $2.62 per year for 4 years.
Gotcha.
Do you want to look at them individually, or are you going to do the other side?
Well, I'll do individually.
Any thoughts? Roughly how many do you have come in a year?
Ooh, that I have to go look up because it's typically, what is it, around 90? That's one of the items I present at the annual members meeting of residential and non-residential new customers, and I don't recall what it was, but
I guess I'm trying to, what is the projected increased revenue?
that I currently don't have that because the past few years we've seen it trended tremendously higher than what I had budgeted for, but this year I don't think that we are on target to meet what I had anticipated to receive. I projected around $1 million, and we're not quite to half that.
So these columns work independent of each other. We just have 5 different options, and the difference is what it would increase every year for that period of time.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Discussion from the committee?
So this,
What's your anticipated, I mean, impact fees are limited to capacity upgrades only, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, simply put, I understand there's more to it than that, but what are your anticipated over the next 3 years capacity upgrade expenses?
We have a number of pump stations that are going to need to be replaced in the coming years. 2, if not 3 of those are fairly large and are considered to be regional stations, if not influent pump stations like in Perkins Creek. So, looking at those, I would say that those would be in the millions of dollars range for the growth.
Total or just?
That would be
Per.
just for the growth, I would believe.
The
The growth portion of that, so I don't know the exact cost of.
Is it on the CIP?
It is, so, but it doesn't break it down into the replacement cost versus the cost that is because of the growth.
When you say millions, is that per station or is that kind of total
It's
between all?
per station. So just to replace a station like for like Senate Creek Station, I believe that just the replacement of that is $3 to $3.5 million. So to upsize that would be, I would think, $1 million, $1.5 million on top of that.
Okay. So you're looking at anywhere from $3 to $5 million worth of capacity upgrades
Yes,
for
sir.
each of those.
Yes,
What's a reasonable time frame you could actually upgrade all 3?
With current, the biggest part of that is not the capacity money that we would receive, but just the general O&M money, because that's what would have to pay for the bulk of the replacement projects. So assuming that it continues like it is, cash only, it would be, we would have to squirrel away some money to save for that. So at the current rate, I would say, maybe one every 2 years.
Okay. What about at the plant?
The plant, I believe that the first phase of that expansion project is anticipated to begin in the design work on it and the permitting work in 4 years, 5 years. And that would be, I think that would be a project that would qualify nearly entirely for use of impact fees for that.
I will say that based on the ad hoc committee, I don't think the debt issue is gonna be a problem. I don't know when that will be. It may be 3 years before that gets done. I doubt it.
And that, I agree, based on the feedback comments we received from that, but, just, we think it would take a year, 2 years, even if it's approved and everything slides through to implement that fully.
Mr. Parrish, you got any thoughts on the impact fees? Or questions?
are you still wanting to stick with 150 versus 300 for residential?
I think, so just for the sake that it's easy to calculate it that way, if we switched over to the other calculation factor, I think the end result is still driven to be the same once we get to that 100% mark.
I just think it's odd that we're not actually charging the users for what we're charged from DEC for. I don't like having that difference. I'm kind of out in the middle of, but I think it should actually reflect what we are being charged from DEC.
I agree.
And I do feel like with, commercial industrial projects, I know you're short-staffed and your time is short, but we tell these folks that are doing this, it's part of doing business. You give us these calculations and your basis, and you can go through those in a few minutes because you're knowledgeable with that and verify that they're covering what they need to cover. But I feel in the long run, we would be better served to have that. to have that accurately reflect the capacity that's being taken from the plant or allocated from the plant. That way, both sides would balance out, and we could see, okay, this much was allocated, this much was collected for that allocation. And long term, I think that would help, because I mean, there's going to have to be an upgrade here, and it's not going to be cheap. It's almost like we're giving away 150 gallons per. And I know you're saying that that's not actual numbers of usage. I get that. I understand that, but DHEC doesn't see it that way.
I understand, and I agree with where you're coming from. The whole reason that we do it is just for the ease of it. You know,
and I understand that too, but for residential, I mean, it's a flat rate either way.
Mhm.
And I understand with the industrial and the commercial, that's gonna be something different for everyone that comes in the door versus a meter. But every meter, after looking at some of this over the last couple of years that we've done this, every meter is not gonna be used to the same potential. I mean, you're gonna come in high on some and low on others. And I think to accurately capture what we actually our usage and our allocation, I think we need to go back to the calculated numbers. But there again, I say we lean on these folks that are doing the development, let them. I mean,
But if we're charging by meter size, does it matter what the allocation is? Does that still come into play in some way?
It does.
It does for a permitted project. If it's something that's happening where we have, where we currently have infrastructure already, it doesn't go to DHEC. It only comes into play when there is for a line extension or a permitted industrial user or a user that's going to be over, I think it's 50,000 gallons a day or maybe 100,000. So large developments, like say Duke Energy, they just provide us with domestic wastewater, but they have to be permitted because they have such a large volume at a single location. But what I may,
The chair loves me.
what I may be able to do, how about if I give this some thought and try to do it, I may be able to put together a spreadsheet, and we can make that spreadsheet where they have to fill this in and provide it to us, sign it, and it's certified, and I'll try to work something between now and when we approve the budget that is reflective of that way, if the committee feels strongly to be able to do it. That we
And
should
I'm not
go
trying to
with that.
increase your workload. I just feel like, I mean, if somebody comes in and says, okay, you've allocated 1 million gallons this year,
Mhm.
and you collected impact fees for 350,000, but DHEC has deemed the allocation for 1 million gallons of flow.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a big difference in the number. I know that's exaggerated, but I just think it would be better if we could get those to balance more closely. And so if you have an industry come in, you got an existing main line, trunk line there, and they're tied to that, but they have on-site systems that they have to design to catch their own flow coming off the plant. They have to get a permit for those.
Correct.
And that is a permitted flow, but it's not an authority line, but that number would it, I guess that would count against our allocation, correct?
It
In
would.
that case?
Anytime there's a construction permit that has to be issued, then it goes against the treatment
And that's
plan.
not uncommon on an industry, correct? I mean, if they move into an existing building, I'm sure.
That's
they're
correct.
making-
Now,
but
there's
if
there's very few industries that really come in. There's only been a small handful of them since I've been here that have started. The biggest ones with us are going to be the commercial, and obviously the residential is by far the largest. The number of subdivisions that we have, where you're looking at 100, 150 homes at one time,
Mhm.
is going to be generally what we're going to receive anyways. That's well over half, I think, of any line extension that we do that's going to be permanent here is for a subdivision. I wish I had those numbers handy that you asked for, but I'll look and I'll do something both ways. But maybe the thing to do, just like we currently have a sheet, even with the way we do impact fees now, where they have to sign it, essentially certifying that it is correct and that if something changes, that they consent to paying additional fees if necessary. So I'll look to see, But where do I need to build that to? If I do change that and go from the 150 to 300, I still with this will need to know what numbers to use per gallon to build the
Yes.
350.
Yes, I understand.
Or I'm sorry, the 300. So what do we need to see with that? Because if we do, even with the current, the 1525 times the 150 like we currently have versus 300 is going to be a tremendous difference.
Mhm.
So what do you want me to have that number working toward?
Well, I know
I'm kinda
last
inclined to
month
go-
you were saying keep it at the same, just increase the capacity.
But recognizing that's gonna be difficult to apply across, evenly across the board. I mean, if it was purely residential, it'd be easier to, and I understand that, it'd be easier to apply that logic to just residential. But I get the commercial and industrial component of it making it difficult. Now, if we put that responsibility on the developer, then it makes it a little easier, but
The other thing too, when you have that is,
it just doesn't make sense.
So
It just
to me-
doesn't make sense to only charge for a certain capacity when
Correct.
DTEC is gonna allocate a greater amount. It just,
Correct.
in my mind, I can't make that make sense.
Well, and the other
But-
side of it too, I mean, as we get closer to our magic 80% number, if we have this where they're actually having to, I mean, if you've got a big user comes in, they're sending a lot of flow and they're above what your average flow for that meter size would be, but there's a lot of water coming from that, a lot of discharge from that. And they're actually paying for that. It may, I mean, if they see the difference in the number, which I guess they won't because they won't know these discussions, but it may encourage them to be a little more efficient in their process and potentially, not that I'm trying to discourage flow, but give us a little more time to recover on our side before we have to do these big investments on upgrades at this plant.
with the process flow, the way that currently is process flow, they pay 1525 for however many gallons they say they need, and that is what the DHEC permit is. So if they come build a plant, their process flow is for 100,000 gallons. They're paying 1525 for that actual amount that they are permitting with
Okay, so that's not
us.
based on meter size. So
That's not based on the meter size. What's based on the meter size would be the domestic.
Oh, okay. Then it makes that part even easier. Sounds like it makes it even easier then because you already know what the process flow amount would be. The domestic would be basically their designer would go through and you number of fixture units, these flows, here's your total, they hand it to you.
Well, it's even easier than that because the DHEC, DES, they have a fixed number for industry. So it's per employee,
Okay.
then they've got a per, if they provide, I think they have like a cafeteria or something
Mhm.
like that, and if they have
Add for
showers,
this, add
that
for
they
this.
have numbers in there. But where that takes us back to with the, the general, and it's the commercial that is the most difficult of them all, because that's where you have a place that's, like in a shell building at a commercial development, like what you may have at a shopping center. They may have go in there and it may be used as an office space or retail space. So they have a fee, and the board back in 2015, they voted when DES or DHEC at that time changed to doing it based on the number of customers. You don't know how many customers any place is gonna have per day. So the board here continued charging impact fees based on the square footage of the building. So I would certainly want to keep that as a variation of the policy that we have for grocery stores and retail spaces and things like that. We don't know what the customer count is, and neither
Yeah,
does
and that's
the building, but where you're gonna have a little bit of a complication from time to time, and we do see it happen, is when you have a change in use, where it may be today it may be a retail shop, and tomorrow it might be a dental office, and then the next day it might be a restaurant. Well, those are three separate entities according to that hydraulic loading calculation. So that means instead of just the meter size up front, That's 3 times we have to go and assess those fees, because that's gonna be a change in use each time along the way. Then if the restaurant goes back to being a
We get back in my meeting. That's when-
retail, do you give a refund? We don't,
I wouldn't.
but
I wouldn't, because that, I mean, in that case, the builder and the property owner would still be, they would have the ability to put whatever they would choose up to that point without an impact fee. So I would say, I wouldn't give you a refund on that. And that just gives them more flexibility and more of a selling point for that property. It actually helps them.
yep.
3 years is what I'm looking at. I mean, if we're within 4 years away from significant expenses, with regards to the plant, and if we have 1 or 2 that need to be replaced over the next couple of years. I'm kind
So-
of thinking of a 3-year approach is my thought process. Sorry, I had to step out. I don't know where we were, but.
So just to give you an idea, because these numbers are based on how we currently do it, if we charge $15.25, and this is where we have to rework the numbers, $15.25 times 300 is $4,500. So I don't have a phase-in for that calculated on this sheet.
Well, do we wanna get a spreadsheet that uses, maybe it's the same percentage, it might not be the exact same amount, but using that 300 versus the 150? I know that there's more than residential, that's just the fast numbers, and just use the same percentage as the year 3 and see what it looks like.
Yeah, I mean,
Are we comfortable with the 3-year period, if that's what the upgrades are needed? Or do we wanna give more time?
I mean, from a pro-development standpoint, I'd like to give more time, but at the same time, I recognize we've got some significant expenses coming, so.
And then one question I have with that too is, you know, you just saw my example with the house, but if we don't change the way we do it for the industrial flow right now, is the same. You know, they're paying the same amount that they currently would be, even though they're $10 less than what they should be as well. So would there be a separate rate to phase in for the industrial if we keep it where it is now, or change the 15.25 to a lesser amount? I can back my way into what the 300 gallons versus the 150, the 15.25 by half, and that's what, 750, 760 per gallon is what it equates to now. But what, I guess we need to think about that too. In all fairness as well, like I said, we haven't permitted very much industrial flow in my time here.
so that's not gonna be your big impact. Your biggest impact's gonna be with residential, which is booming right now.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
Which it sounds like there's gonna be more coming from what I'm hearing recently, so.
So we wanna look at the residential using the actual 300 that DES charges us, but on industrial, we wanna keep it the same as we're doing it currently.
We could have industrial follow this that he's got proposed.
And that would only be for process flow. The other calculations for
Domestic.
the number of employees or the domestic wastewater will be calculated differently.
Is that the information we need?
Yeah, I would say we follow the your implementation for the industrial. Like I say, you don't have as many of those. You have very few of those actually coming in right now, but your biggest impact's gonna be on residential, and that's where we need to focus and get nailed down. Because that's coming in here every day, so. But I do think it needs to reflect that, the true number.
How about this, Mr. Parrish? Would you and the committee here be okay if I put together just over the next few days, a draft spreadsheet based on the DES flow calculations with the variant in there that we use square footage as the board approved a number of years ago. And send this to you, get any feedback or comment from you on it.
Sure.
Go and plug in numbers, see what it does, and maybe I'll have a column in there. I have to figure out how to do that too, but what it would be under the current rate to see what the difference would be.
Sure.
And then once we decide that, then I think I guess I can look at what that 3-year phase in would be.
Okay. That sounds good to me.
Mhm.
Alright.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so on the user fees,
All right, on the back side of the sheet, you see, you've heard Daryl Parker's presentation to us back at the March meeting. So what I've done here is on the very far left, current rates, anticipated revenue, and then the fees for what the typical, and I think 5,000 gallons is a little high for your typical residential user per month, but that's what the industry standard is for calculating these. Then you got the first column beyond the notes for the items. You see the value of what a 1% increase would be. Then you've got 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25. And then under the first solid, more thick line, you see what that anticipated annual revenue would be, the difference, and then, the bottom two would be for the cost for residential user. So there's 3 tables on this. One of them is an increase to the base fee only, which is a flat fee that's on the bill. The volumetric stays the same. The middle one is a volumetric change. The base fee stays the same. And then the bottom one is a change to the base and volumetric evenly by those percentages as listed at the top. So what, is I'm winding down not winding down, but kind of in the middle, the 2/3 of the budget process. Kyle and I especially, we need something because, you can raise rates tremendously, and I think we can find a way to spend them just on items in that 1A that, we need to do with the consent order, but that's not possible to do, it's not feasible. So what I'm looking at here as I develop the budget is where does this committee feel they would be able to support any increase at all? And to what? The base rate only, volumetric only, or both combined?
I personally would only look at the volumetric only and keep the base where it is. And no more than 5% in my opinion.
So we're still planning to do cash basis on upgrades and everything, is that what we're looking, or you?
Yes, sir.
I know in the past, I've always been told that the bond agencies or any of the lending agencies like to see a good base rate, because that's more of a guarantee for them, but I think volumetric probably outside of that, I think that would be a more reasonable way to go, because that way, the more you use, the more you have to pay.
Alright, so we have one talking volumetric only, no more than 5. I understand as far as the base, but like you said, the more you use, the more you pay in this case, so
Yeah, that's-
volumetric.
Yeah, that captures that.
Do you have a particular percentage?
Bless
Bless you. That you feel like it should be kept out?
The way the economy is right now, everything's tight for people, but it's tight for us too.
So 5%, looking at volumetric only, and this is assuming my Excel calculations are correct. A 5% volumetric increase only for residential would be a difference of 27 cents per customer per month.
Per gallon or per total?
For total 5,000 gallons. That's again assuming that calculation is correct.
I think it's supposed, because the 1% has a 0, but it's actually a little bit higher from the current.
Let's see.
It'd be $1.08.
Mhm.
Okay.
I think what that is,
Per gallon.
that line is actually showing what the per 1,000 gallon difference is.
2.7 times 5. It's $1.35.
$1.35 is what I have as well.
Figure 37.22. That's the 1%. So yeah, 36.85 to 38.30. The 27 cents. It's a per gallon
Per
1,000 gallon.
Yep, that's correct. That's
Yeah.
right.
So you'd be $1.35 more per month per customer.
I know what it is. When I copied and pasted it from Excel into Word, I think that 27 cents supposed to be what it would be at 1%. I think I pasted it in the wrong rows. So I think shift everything over.
Why do you copy it into Word?
It was easier to print the table this way.
You can save it as a PDF.
Well, it was with the text at the top and the headings, it was just easier to do it. I tried it that way and it just wasn't.
You do you.
All right, so, yeah, let's look at time.
This thing started off as a real simple Word document and you can
Okay.
imagine kind of grew.
All right, so right now, what I'm hearing sounds like volumetric only and maybe looking at the 5%.
That's what I mean, I couldn't support any more than that right now.
So it's $1.35 on a 5% increase average, I guess.
Mhm.
$15 a month, $15 a year.
I would be okay with the 10% because, I mean, it wouldn't be that much more and it would just get us to where we need to be sooner. But, or somewhere in the middle ground. Cause I just see that 3 years coming up quickly. I don't wanna gouge anybody at all, but I just also know we've got a point that we've got to be at.
And I know the different municipalities probably don't know, but theirs may be adjusting too for the exact same reason. So we gotta
Yeah.
think of
Correct.
the overall impact on the
Correct.
customer, not just from the authority.
That's $13.50 a month at 10%. If my math is correct, so 39. And that's the total amount, 39.65 minus 36.895. So $2.70 a month.
$2.70, yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a little bit of an increase. It's not a huge amount.
$32 a year.
Shouldn't break anybody at this point, but it gets us a little bit closer. And I know, like I said, cities are most likely gonna have some increases on their own. And then all this is likely to change once, you know, this committee comes back and.
I will say too,
Yeah.
you know, I don't have this with me, but I received it Friday. We annually have an independent firm go and look at our rates that we typically charge our industrial users for surcharges for phosphorus and total suspended solids. And as part of that, they determine what our treatment cost is for, you know, what it takes to treat, say, septic delivery. So those, when I present the schedule of fees for revision, it includes their recommendations in there based on their cost. The note that they provided to us in there is, it was the cost to treat a gallon of water, or 1,000 gallons of water here, was in the $6 and something cents range. So in a way, right,
We're not
even the
even
way we have it right now, the non-residential volumetric is subsidizing the residential volumetric.
How much per thousand?
it was 6 something. I could go grab it, but it was in the $6 range. Maybe $6.35, $6.50, something like that.
Well, I mean, basically your base is covering, making up the difference at this point on the residential side.
Another $2 would be $7.39 volume metric.
Yeah.
So what I need to do, I need to fix this sheet and I'll email that out.
And that cost of treatment would be good to have, I mean, looking at this for the rest of the board also, because that's, I mean, that's something that's gotta be considered. If we're not covering costs, that's an issue. Not saying we need to jump up there all at once, but we need to have that sitting there so we know where we need to be, where we need to go.
But I'm with you, a $10 base, divided by 5,000, gives you $2 per thousand, added on top of the $7.39, at $5.39, you're at $7.39 residential rate, so in my opinion, it's covering the cost per thousand to treat.
Mhm.
Do we need to make a motion for any of these, or are we gonna wait and let an updated table be brought back and just brought to the board?
And I'm not asking for any discussion, I'm just asking for general planning purposes for me, how much to go ahead and factor in.
I still
what
think
we-
5% in my opinion, if we're gonna adjust user rates to more than 5, but again.
So if we went 5%, how close would that get us within the 3 years? To where
The 3 years.
well, you're trying to get some, I mean, I know we have a lot coming up. We've got a lot of work that's gotta be done.
It doesn't get us very far because we've got a lot of small stuff too that just gets built into the O&M budget that these fees typically pay for.
I guess,
We can't operate half the, I shouldn't say half the plant, but there's considerable, we can't flow 7.8 million gallons. Our goal at the end of next year is to have the plant where it's fully operational or as close to it as we can be.
and what would it take to be there?
I think if I remember correctly, $500,000 to $600,000.
Okay.
I believe that's the number, I think.
So what would it take with these rates that you got on the spreadsheet to get, which one of those would it take to get us to that point? I guess is kind of questions.
Well, that's where I haven't started backing stuff out of it. I've thrown everything into it right now till I can get a number from here as to what the committee and the board would feel comfortable with. And then I'll start removing
Well,
items.
that's what I'm trying to do. I mean, figure out what do we have to have done for next year?
Well,
what do we need to have for the operation of the plant? What will it take to get there? What's absolutely critical that we get done? What are those numbers?
I'll look at that and see. So that'll go, I'm just gonna talk about that next.
Okay.
But, I felt that it was probably unlikely to get 25%. But I wanted to go ahead and show what those were gonna be on here, because again, like Daryl showed, we take as much as we can get, and
Who's there
Have
like
needs
75%
for it all.
increase for the next 3 years, I believe, and
yeah.
that's not realistic at all.
That's also assuming no debt.
No,
moving
they
That's
saw-
right,
they-
assuming no debt.
All the customers saw an increase last year, and, the cities are still having to collect and.
Correct.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I'm just not doing that.
And really,
I may be the loan guy, but I'm just not doing that.
And I will state too, that our rate, the rate has not changed. The current rate that we have now, the $5.39, $7.37, $10, and $15 volumetric base, that was all built based on the equivalent of what was being paid at the time for what we were collecting from the program.
Your rate may not have changed, but what my citizens have paid,
Mhm.
It's gone up.
has gone from 1.9 million to over $3 million in 5 years. The rate may not have changed, but what my people are paying is a significant increase, 2.5 times. Now, the rest of the citizens in this area may not have seen that, but mine have. I'm not putting any more on them. I'm just not.
Obviously, the increases like that.
So for the impact, we're looking at the 3-year, you're gonna do the housing and industrial for the process and domestic. And then for the user, let's look at volumetric only. If you wanna do the 5 and the 10 both, do that. Say split the baby and look at 7 if you want to. But I'm kind of leaning more toward the 5 as well, just because I think there's going to be increases in other ways that is going to impact the ratepayers. And ultimately, we say we want growth to pay for growth, so. All right. Any other discussion on the rates or impact fees? All right. March and year-to-date financial reports.
These were emailed out by Ms. Stevens on April 15th. If you had an opportunity to take a look at it, let us know any questions you may.
So you mentioned the one being only about half for impact.
Impact fees, You know, which is, we don't have any budgeted expenses for that anyways, and it's kind of just a roll of dice. We don't know, what is and isn't gonna happen from year to year. It's based on what we had seen the previous year.
Any questions or concerns? Is there a motion to approve?
So
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Posting draft editions of the ad hoc committee meeting to the website prior to OJSAC board.
Okay, so this is an item that David Dial had brought to me after he had received a copy of the ad hoc committee meeting. He just says that it's a long time for, once the board approves to accept these, for this to get out and be made available to the public. So what he asked to be done is, and added to the agenda, is for consideration or board support for making draft committee meetings available to the public.
So are you looking at a time frame after the ad hoc committee has approved, but before the board has approved, or prior to the ad hoc committee approved?
I think even possibly prior to the ad hoc committee.
Yeah,
I don't think you can do
that.
I'm not in
No,
support of
not
that, no.
I think you gotta wait till the ad hoc committee at least approves of it in its form before you can post it.
I mean, the video's up so they can go and watch it,
Right.
but,
That's probably better than the minutes.
I don't know, Lynn.
Lynn.
That's a great job.
I'm not knocking men's minutes. I'm just saying this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the
You can
video's
see
there,
it
it's
when
live
it's
fed. I don't think you should until after the ad hoc committee has a chance to approve them. I think they can go out before the full board accepts them, so long as, they've seen them before they get posted, but.
No, I mean, definitely after ad hoc committee has approved, because they were the ones that were actually there that should be approving them. It's
Correct.
more of just an acceptance of the board.
Correct.
But I would not post them beforehand,
All right.
because there's been times in which maybe it's just a minor thing, but if it's already out there, then it's in the public realm.
All right. Would that be something that the board would need to vote on, do you believe, for that to take place?
I think the ad hoc committee
Yeah.
would probably,
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's fine.
it's their minutes. I mean, I think just get them
Yeah.
to agree to it.
Okay.
I don't think we need to. Alright. Do you wanna vote on that, or are you comfortable with what we did?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I'll expect it ad hoc.
Alright, discussion and compliance?
NPDS permit, we finally got the draft copy of that back late last week, and we're in the process of reviewing it. FY 2026 budget, so my plan with that is to provide that draft budget to all the commissioners prior to the board meeting that's coming up. I'm not gonna ask for any action to take place at the May meeting, but just general discussion. If anybody's so inclined, I'll have a place on there. Again, there's not gonna be a vote on the budget for May. The intent is to have discussion there, but also for committee or commissioners that are not on the F&A committee to provide any feedback or comment that they may have to their city's representatives on this committee for committee consideration for advancing it to the board for the June board meeting. So committee vote will take place at the May F&A meeting to advance to the board for full consideration. June 2nd, I believe, is the date. So that's the plan with the budget. Hazard mitigation grant, I provided you with a copy of the letter to provide to Mr. Bronson, the city administrator, and also to the administrators that are here on the board. And what this is just a draft copy asking for a letter of support for a grant application we would be applying for FEMA to raise manholes that we have within the floodplain that are causing us to have to shut down the plant when they flood. Corrective action plans for city. Allison, she's returned back from an extended period of time away, so she'll be resuming her review and provide any feedback and questions that she has on the submittals that were received within the last couple of months. And that just a reminder to the cities that the biannual corrective action plan report is due to Allison. I think it's on April 30th, and then again October 30th of each year, and she, I believe, provided a standard form to be used. What I've mentioned earlier, that what I'll do is I'll correct this table. I'll resend it out, but I will remove the 15, 20, 25%, and I'll add a 7.5%, just so you can see what that would be if. Okay, well it's easy, it's all I gotta do is plug in the number at the top, it'll calculate it on its own.
You just keep it what you got.
Okay,
Don't add more work.
all right, and then my aim is to not have a board meeting in July, because it's my 25th anniversary, and we want to go do something, so that's all I have. Thank you.
Alright, any member discussion?
Amen.
Alright, May 27th, work for everybody?
Yes.
Alright,
All right, I gotta go. See you guys.
Thank you.
Hey,
motion to adjourn?
so move.
So moved.
Here we go.
Ah!
Got it in at the last second.